Planned Parenthood's primary cause is ending as many lives as they can as early as possible, but even they've weighed in on DACA because every left-wing organization must profess the same views on everything. President Cecile Richards of Planned Parenthood explained why in a statement. She said, we're quoting now, "Here at Planned Parenthood, we firmly believe that every person has the right to live." Apparently the batteries in Planned Parenthood's irony detectors failed. Fox senior political analyst Brit Hume joins us now. I think this actually is a complicated question, what you do with all these people. But I don't see a complicated debate in progress. I see a lot of moral outrage and preening and yelling and name-calling. Why don't we have, like, a real debate on immigration?
A couple of things. First of all, Tucker, I certainly take your point about Planned Parenthood talking about everyone having a right to live.
Yeah, pretty wonderful.
It's hard not to choke on that. But beyond that, what strikes me about all the hysterics and the melodrama about this issue is that if you look at it, for longer than just a few seconds, you realize a couple of things. One is, of course, that this dreaded event is not going to happen, if it ever does, for another 6 months, right? Which means that Congress has time to legislate this if it will. And the president opened a huge trapdoor in the whole thing when he said yesterday that if Congress doesn't act, he's prepared to revisit the issue.
Yes.
It's pretty clear that he doesn't want to do this, and that he felt, for whatever reason, that not least probably the fact that DACA's constitutionality is deeply suspect, that he needed to draw a line. But it seems clear to me that if Congress does not act, that he's not going to do this. He's not going to go forward with it. He will delay it. And there is built into what he proposed anyway the potential for delay in individual cases and so on. So my guess with Tucker tonight is that none of these 800,000 or so will ever be deported.
I'd bet my car on that. More broadly, and it's still early, but the president is not turning out to be as tough on immigration as a lot of his critics feared and supporters hoped.
Well, that's right. I think he would like to get something for his willingness to go along with signing a bill that would make DACA legal.
Right.
Maybe he'd like to get some wall funding or other measures to toughen up our border enforcement. That sounds like the shape of the kind of compromise that used to be common in Washington.
Is that even possible now?
Well, you think it would be on paper. It looks like it should be. But in this polarized atmosphere in which we're operating, nobody wants to give an inch. Now, he could maybe make a deal with some Democrats, like he did now on these budgetary matters, and the hurricane relief funding, and the debt limit, which is a short-term deal that is being looked at as kind of which was just reached today, which is being looked at as kind of an outright win for Pelosi and Schumer, the Democratic leaders in the two houses. That used to be the kind of thing that went on all the time, but in recent years it's been less likely the case. So I think it's anybody's guess, but I still think that even if they can't make a deal, that he will yield on this, that he will not go forward with this.
Then a lot of hysteria has been wasted. I think you're right.
This is typical, I think, of what's been the pattern with the Trump coverage. That if it is the job of journalists to show the American people what this president really is like and is all about, straightforward reporting will do the job.
Yeah, well,
journalists seem not content with that. And there are columnists at the Washington Post and elsewhere that write essentially the same column over and over and over again, reminding us about Trump's personal characteristics, which I think that a great many of his supporters, and even some who are simply going along with him, have long recognized. I think that job is basically done, and they can't let it alone. They can't. And
they knew what he was like when they voted for him. I'm going to take your word for it because I haven't read that paper in a year, and I'm never reading it again. But thank you, Britt, for the latest word from the Washington Post.